Check my audio devices. Okay, check my microphone. My microphone seems to be working. Okay, do we have anything yet? If you hear me, please let me know because I'm getting signal here on my audio. It's showing that there is, in fact, a microphone working. Let me just double check and see if you're getting it any now. Any audio now? Let's see. Okay, it's on now. Okay, great. Yeah, very interesting that we've had this difficulty. I had a difficulty on RFA earlier today as well. All right, well, let's begin again from the beginning. Okay. A lot of discussion in the mainstream is that Elohiym means alien gods. And we hear this discussion over and over again in the pop culture, that in fact Elohiym means the gods or the aliens, and that the aliens came to Earth to create mankind in order to have slaves that would help them mine gold, primarily in South Africa, so that they could leave the planet and return home. Now, this discussion point was given legs in the work of Zecharia Sitchin's in his discussion of the Sumer cuneiform. I want to say Sumerian, but it's difficult because oftentimes we confuse the people of Sumer with the people of Samaria. And you have to remember that the Sumer and the Aryans were two distinctly different cultures. So you cannot say Sumer-Aryan, but the people of Sumer and their record has been decoded by some, and Zecharia Sitchin's holding out himself as the foremost expert, saying that Elohiym meant gods or aliens that came to Earth. Now, we have a discussion that is similar to this when we see the discussion points that take place in mythology, whether it's Greek mythology, Egyptian mythology, Hindu mythology. We have the same discussion of basically gods coming to Earth and having relations with some kind of beings that were here. And as a result of those relations, we have demigods, such as Hercules or Achilles and so on, that were, half god, half man. Of course, these gods that came to Earth, we understand them as fallen watchers. But when we talk about the word Elohiym, what does Elohiym mean? And let's take a look at our next slide and let's see what the assignment is here, because it's very clear that the opening phrase in Scripture reads, "In the beginning, Elohiym created at the heavens and at the earth." Or at least this is the generally accepted translation. And let's take a look at some of that here. We'll get out our little annotation feature, and maybe we can annotate this a little bit. And you can see that it begins with Brashith, or in the beginning, bara, created, Elohiym, et hashamayim, uet haaretz. All right, well, okay, that's interesting. And you have to ask yourself the question, and I think I ask myself the question, why does the word bara precede the word Elohiym? In other words, why doesn't it read Breshith Elohiym bara et hashamayim uet haaretz? In the beginning, Elohiym created at the heavens and at the earth. And we see that's how it's generally written in the English. However, these two should probably be inverted if you're going to actually speak the semantic that is in the Hebrew. In the beginning, created Elohiym at the heavens and at the earth. All right. And again, this is an assumption that we believe is a true statement in the English language concerning this passage. But nowhere do we see the name Yahweh. We see only Elohiym. And we know that Elohiym is a form of El, right? So if we have the word El, or El is a better pronunciation, El, and we can see that El Elyon, El Shaddai, Eloah, Elohekam, Eloheka, Elohai, all of these names stem from this word El that begins this discussion. Okay, so with that being said, then we've kind of have this idea that El is a pre-existent, and Elohim is who gets the credit for all of the creation. Elohim gets the credit for that. And we know that we see two kinds of suffixes in the Hebrew language. We see the IYM or YM, or sometimes IM, IYM, which is a masculine plural. It's a masculine plural. And we see ot, OTH, sometimes ut, and sometimes et. But we see this as a feminine suffix, a feminine plural. So, for instance, when we talk about the cookie crumbs that are found at the bottom of the Hebrew letters in the Masoretic text, separately, nikud, meaning cookie crumb, plural, nikudot, nikudot, the feminine plural, meaning cookie crumbs, nikudot. Whereas Elohim appears to have a masculine plural associated with the name. Now, for instance, you see another masculine plural in this phrase right here in the word shamaim. Okay, we'll leave out the prefix he. Shamaim, shamayim, and you can see here that we have the YM, just as we have the YM here in Elohim, which appears to make it a masculine plural. Now, the question I have for you is, if that's a masculine plural, then is the heavens a masculine plural? Should it read the heavens and not just heaven, right? Well, we have the he here, which gives us a the, and we have the he here, which gives us a the there. So the heaven and the earth. Okay, but is it plural? Well, it's the same condition that you have with the word mayim. And with mayim, you have this idea of mayim, which is like, mem, yod. And then, of course, you have mem, sophit. And so this appears to be, well, that looks an awful lot like just a plural, right? The plural of from, right? And the prefix, mayim. However, now I'm going to show you something, and we're going to come back to this. We're going to come back to mayim here in a little bit. Okay, you see this mayim, meaning water. Is this a plural? Is this a masculine plural? Because we have the Y or the Yod Mem Safit, masculine plural. Is it a masculine plural? Okay, Mayim, masculine plural. Now we have the same issue with Mayim. 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 Here's Mayim, water here, and here's the here, prefixing it, saying, oh, well, that is the heavens, or in modern Hebrew, just merely the sky, okay, or the ceiling, if you will. Shamayim. Is that a masculine plural? All right. Well, this becomes a big question, because if it is, then it tends to corroborate the idea that there were gods, quote unquote. All right. It's often claimed by those with the rudimentary understanding of the Ivrit language that the word or title, if you will, Elohim, means gods. The logic is that the word El is finalized with the masculine plural suffix im, therefore it means gods. However, we will see that it is not a plural of gods per se, but rather a plurality of expression that constitutes the singular, the unified, or the oneness, echad, of Yahweh. All right, let's see if that's true. Let's see if this holds up, right? Let's get into this. All right, so we're going to see the problem gets larger when you consider this verse just down the chapter a little bit in Genesis 1:26 or Bereshit 1:26. And it reads here, and Elohim said, let us make man in our image after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and over the cattle and over the earth and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. Well, is it true that it's us? Let us do this? Well, let's take a look at the passage. Now, here it is in the Hebrew, and you can see in the Ivrit, and you're going to be able to see here very clearly that, okay, so we have this passage here, which is very common in opening a Hebrew phrase, Vayimer Elohim, and spoke Elohim. Okay, so let's leave the rest of that out. Vayimer Elohim. Okay, great, we got that. Colon, put a colon here. Okay, great. Now we see what? Naseh, make us, right? Adam, Aleph, Dalet, Mem, Safit, Adam, okay? Ba, Salem, Nu. Ba, Salem, Nu, Ka, Damut, Nu. Ka, Damut, Nu. Okay, so I want to point a couple things out here. First of all, we have to start with the prefixes, okay? So we have a prefix here, and we have a prefix here. So this prefix here, the bait, it means in. In. And this prefix here, the kof, means like. Like. All right, now we have a suffix. And the suffix is here. Oh, excuse me. Whoop, hold it, not there. The suffix is here and here. And this suffix is nu, like this, nun, vav, with a shurik, nu. Okay, and this means us or our. So if you were to say Eloheinu, that means our Elohim, our Elohim. In this case, the nu means us or our. All right, now let's take a look. So what is it saying here? Okay, well, thus says Elohim, we got that part, okay, make man, Adam, in our image. Now, there's no vav here, like our likeness. Now, so there should be absolutely no question whatsoever that this is a prefix meaning our. No question whatsoever. That's a prefix meaning our. Okay? So it doesn't mean my. If it was my, it would be a yod. It's nu, it means our, not my, which would be a yod. So if it was my, let us make man in my image after my likeness, na'aseh Adam b'salemi kadamuti. But that's not what it says. It says salem nu kadamut nu. So there's very little question that this is make man in our image and after our likeness. Okay. All right, let's continue. So that kind of gives credence to the fact that Elohim is a plural. Now let's take a look at these words that we're talking about, Selem and Damut, because this too is image, or this too is interesting. Now take a look at this. What does Selem mean? It means a shade, a phantom, an illusion, a resemblance. Hence, a representative figure. Hence, that's down the road, right? An image, a vain show. Okay, so what are you talking about? Let's make man as our phantom. As our phantom. It's a possible translation. Let's make man as our phantom and like what? Our resemblance or our model or our shape, our fashion, our likeness, okay, our similitude. Let's make man in our phantom and shape. Let's make man as in our shadow and shape, okay? And this word damut comes from dama, which means to resemble, liken, to compare, comparatively, similitude, okay? So it's very interesting that when we see the word likeness, let us make man in our image, that this is really a phantom image, like a shadow, right? Like a shadow, like a phantom image. Very interesting, I think. Now, what is a three-dimensional shadow? I mean, that's another question, right? But nonetheless, this was an our phrase. Now, let's take a look here. When we look at the word Elohiym without the nikudot vowel sounds, however, we find something else that's also interesting. There's no O in the sound, okay? There's no O. So what you see with without the nikudot, the spelling on Elohiym is, it's Aleph, Lamed, He, Yod, Mem Safit. That's how you spell it, right? So Aleph, Lamed, He, Yod, and Mem Safit. So where do you get the O? Well, the O was injected. Why was it injected? Because the Masoretes wanted to disguise some things. And we're going to see they may have disguised something very, very curious by the time we're done with this. They may have disguised something very, very curious indeed. Okay. Now, so if we take a look what they may have disguised, there's another term that they insist has an O in it, which is the term that it applies in Exodus 20, where Yahweh says, I am Yahweh, your Elohim. In the Hebrew, Anki, Yahweh Eloheka. Now, this is very interesting that you would say Anki, because they want to say, they inject an O, saying it's not Anki, it's Anoki, because it is distinct from the Sumer script talking about Enki. It's distinct from that. It's not Enki, it's Anoki, because we added an O. We added an O there to make sure you didn't get confused, that it's different. That there's no O that appears in the text. There's no O that appears to the text. Okay, now I'm gonna address a question we'll ask. Joseph asked the question, who did Cain marry? Actually, Joseph, you need to check the book of Jubilees and it will tell you who Cain married, and he did in fact marry his sister. They didn't mind waiting. Okay, all right. So when we see this, what do we see? It should not be pronounced Elohim, adding a vav with a holum on it that doesn't exist in that word. It doesn't exist. Oh, you shall not add to nor take from the text. And yet the Masoretes added to every single word and took from every single word. What's that tell you? Okay. So when we see this, we have to look at it and say, well, wait a minute, let's ignore that and let's see what we get when we eliminate the O. Well, we get Elohiym. Elohiym. All right, now let's see how that translates into something we can make sense of. Okay, a closer look gives us the understanding of two premises. El, Aleph Lamed, followed by Hayim, He, Yod, Mem Safit. Why would we do such a thing? Well, consider the underlying terusha of the letters which create this word. Aleph, the ox head, or in I think a better understanding is the sheep head, meaning, for a lack of a better term, the Godhead. I don't like using that term, but it's something we can understand. Lamed, the shepherd's staff, meaning the good shepherd, i.e. Mashiach. He, meaning the breath of Yah, or the Ruach. Yod, the possessive suffix, which claims all things belong to Yah first and then to the recipient of the term, and mem sofit, the waters where the possessive is found, rendering the word plural in its application. The water in which the possessive is found. Now, that is going to become something really critical when we get to the end of this discussion, okay? So we can see that we're talking about two things here. We're talking about El, Aleph Lamed, and then we're talking about Hayim. Okay. Well, hello. Let's go back to that. So we're talking about the plurality of Yahweh in the Aleph and the Lamed, Yahusha, and then the plurality of the Ruach. Is there a plurality of the Ruach? Of course there is. Isaiah 11:2 is quite explicit about the plurality of the Ruach. And the Ruach Yahweh shall rest upon him, the Ruach Chokmah and Bina, the Ruach Etza and Gevurah, the Ruach Da'at and Yira of Yahweh. This is what is in Isaiah 11:2. I didn't make it up. This is what is in Isaiah 11:2. And there's actually a further description in the book of Enoch talking about additional characteristics of the Ruach HaKodesh. I suspect that the Ruach HaKodesh has an infinite number of possibilities, not just 7, but we're given 7 to understand in our foremost priority. And believe me, understanding in Scripture is given to us in a priority. It's given to us to know in a priority and to understand in a priority. That is why when both Gospels, both Luke and Matthew say, and Mark, they come and say, the Rabbi, tell us what is the greatest commandment. Or in the case of Mark, Rabbi, tell us what is the first commandment. Is there first? Is there greatest? If there is, then there's something that is right at the top of the pyramid. And then there's a secondary understanding, which calls you to have an understanding of the hierarchy of Scripture, and to know Scripture in a hierarchy and not in some kind of a flat line, having to memorize 613 mitzvot, right? My yoke is easy, my burden is light. Okay. All right, now we're going to look at something different. In reviewing Bereshit, Genesis 1:1, we can see the following reasoning. In the beginning, the Aleph and the shepherd and the rule code of Yahweh created the heavens and at the earth. Now, you see, that's a different understanding of Elohim, other than to say, oh, in the beginning, the aliens created the heavens and the earth in order to make mankind so they could have gold slaves in South Africa. Huh? No, the better understanding in the Ivrit is, in the beginning, the Aleph, the shepherd, and the Ruach of Yahweh created the heavens and the earth. Ruach is, of course, plural for Ruach, or spirit. All right, now I'm going to show you something that is going to be illuminating. It's going to be the first time you've ever heard it. And I hope you guys will consider it, okay? But take a look at this. If we divide the word El from the Hayim, is it possible another meaning exists other than to say that's a masculine plural? And yes, it is, because look at the word Yam. Not yummy, but Yam. Now, Yam is Yod Mem Safit. This is from an unused root meaning to roar or a sea. A sea in a noisy surf, a large body of water, sometimes a large river or an artificial basin. Okay, now let's take a look at this and let's look at some of these words that we've been talking about. Let's begin with this word, mime. Okay, so let's put up here mime. Now, we know that this mem can be a prefix. This can be a prefix. And so if it is a prefix, what does it mean? Well, it means from. It's the prefix from. Okay. And if Yam is sea, then this is the sea Then what is Mayim? Mayim is from the sea, right? Now, what about the Shem that appears in Shamayim? If we put a Shem up here, let's put a Shem here. I think that's it. Let's put a Shem here. That's not the right color, but we'll have to deal with it. For Shamayim, well, this is chaos from the sea. Now, so take a look at this. Remember that when we're talking about the initial discussion of creation, right? If we're talking about the initial discussion of creation, I'm going to go in this with you now. And let's listen to this discussion again in Bereshith chapter 1, because we're going to see something here that I think is worthy of discussion. Look at this. In the beginning, Elohiym created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. Now, what was the deep? Well, the Ruach Elohim moved upon the face of the waters, moved upon the face of the Mayim, okay? Moved upon the face of the waters, of the Mayim, right? And then when we get down here, we see in verse 6, and a lot of people disagree with our use of the term expanse. They want to use firmament, but however you want to understand it, firmament or expanse. And Elohim said, let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters. So we're talking about what existed entirely before anything else was the waters, the Mayim. And let the expanse divide the waters from the waters. And Elohim made the expanse and divided the waters which were under the expanse from the waters which were above the expanse, and it was so. And Elohim called the expanse earth? No. Elohim called the expanse heaven. Elohim called the expanse Shamayim. Shamayim, okay? So we see that Shamayim is some kind of chaos between the waters, right? Shamayim is some kind of chaos between the waters. The Rakia is some kind of chaos between the waters. But before the expanse is made, which is all of heaven, everything else was water. Everything else was water. Now, if we take a look at this, now we begin to see something. What if Elohim is not El Hayim, but rather El Hayam? Now the scripture would read, in the beginning, El, or in the beginning created El, the sea, and the heavens, and the earth. Rightly dividing the word. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, that is going to wrap our discussion up today. And join us at Cepher.net. Congregational discounts are available. If anybody wants to pick up a combination of text, you can do that. All right. And I'm going to, what am I going to do? I'm going to go back here like this, few our previous slides. And I want to thank you guys in the chat for joining us here today. And I want to thank you guys for being a part of this ministry. And thank you for just being gentle souls. Okay, I'm going to thank you for that. Because as you know, life is rough out there. And some of us just have to keep going to do the best we can. Okay, guys, so thank you. And I hope to see most of you at the Sabbath meeting this coming Saturday. And otherwise, we'll see you at Cepher Academy. And thank you. Okay, blessings to you, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.